We are hearing more from the Harvard community about the resignation of President Claudine Gay. In the student newspaper, the Harvard Crimson, the editorial board says the university must learn from Gay's tenure. In the essay, the board talks about the activists who led the charge to force her out. Quote, "This is an assault on higher education. It employs the cheapest, most foul tactics American politics has to offer, and it will not end with Claudine Gay's presidency." But as we discussed last night, the editorial board also said it's not that simple. Quote, "The motives of these attacks do not detract from the genuine criticisms of Gay's tenure." Joining me now to discuss, Tommy Barone, co-chair of the Harvard Crimson editorial board. Tommy, I just want to start with you. Explain what this whole thing has been like. You're a college student on Christmas break.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, Steph. The first thing I'll say is, it's been surreal being on campus for longer than a couple of weeks. We were studying for finals a couple of weeks ago as the outrage over congressional testimony came to a head. You walk out of the library and there's a New York Times reporter asking for comment. That's what things were like. Right now, I think it's definitely a little bit less intense when you're not in the physical space, but it's still pretty striking. Just a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, the Crimson was reporting on the huge news that Gay would succeed to the presidency, would become the first Black person to lead Harvard, the first Black woman to lead Harvard. And now, almost exactly a year later, we're reporting on what has been the shortest tenure of a university president in history.
What about the weight and the power of your paper? You did publish an anonymous essay from a student who said, listen, our professors, our administration needs to adhere to the same policies, the same rules that the students do, and said she should resign. That had an impact. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of talk about, on Twitter and elsewhere about student journalism needing to be celebrated. And what I would say to that, it's nice, but this is real journalism. This is not student journalism. This is the highest standard. We're scooping national publications on the news side. And on the opinion side, we're shaping the discourse on what has been an issue that is important to the nation because it brings a lot of other important themes to light, questions about merit, about diversity, and about this, really intense and divisive geopolitical conflict. Regarding the anonymous op-ed, I think that the kind of compelling argument on its face of the double standard is something that persuaded a lot of people to end up against Claudine Gay.
She wrote an essay in the New York Times just today, and I want to share just one quote from it, where she writes, "At tense moments, every one of us must be more skeptical than ever of the loudest and most extreme voices in our culture. However well organized or well connected they might be, too often, they are pursuing self-serving agendas that should be met with more questions." How should Harvard deal with these loud voices? Many of these voices that were calling for her resignation have absolutely nothing to do with Harvard University.
Yeah, and this is really the essential question, Steph. How do you move forward as an institution dedicated to the pursuit of truth, but that also in the pursuit of truth has to acknowledge uncertainty when other people are making simplistic, bad faith arguments that attempt to smear your credibility? And so to me, the thing that's really challenging is, people, a lot of people who hear these arguments identifying that people attacking Claudine Gay were operating in bad faith respond by saying, well, there are genuine criticisms that people can make of Claudine Gay. Our board acknowledges that in our recent staff editorial. But the thing that I think is important to remember and that we can't lose sight of is that Claudine Gay did not leave the presidency of Harvard University because of the legitimate criticisms. There was not a serious discussion of a lot of those criticisms. I think it's pretty clear that they were a pretext for people who want to smear higher education. And if you aren't sure about that, I would encourage you to look at what they're saying. People like Chris Rufo, people like Elise Stefanik, immediately after Claudine Gay's resignation was announced, were trumpeting their victory on Twitter. Elise Stefanik converted it immediately into a fundraising call. Both of them then went on to say that this was the beginning of an assault on the, quote, wokeness of higher education. This was never about Claudine Gay. It was never about her scholarship record. It was never about, plagiarism. And I think it's telling that there was no serious discussion of what exactly the plagiarism allegations entailed and how they should actually bear on a university president's continued tenure. It was a pretext to then move straight to bad faith smear campaign against, Harvard's first Black woman president. And the criticisms, were targeted to her identity, too.
God bless you, Tommy Barone. January of my senior year in college, I was thinking about where I was going on spring break. We are in good hands with men like you in the future. Tommy Barone, thank you for being here.